I was still in my apron after a double shift when my stepmom stepped into the kitchen, crossed her arms, and told me I now owed her $930 a month to live in the house I'd grown up in. Her voice was steady, rehearsed like she'd been waiting for this moment. Cade yelled upstairs at his video game. Leora filmed herself in the hallway mirror, and somehow I was the one who needed to start contributing. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink because she had no idea she'd just triggered the one secret capable of ending everything she'd built. People assume a house becomes yours the moment you move into it. But for me, this place was mine long before I understood what ownership meant. I was 8 when my mom died, and the world went quiet in a way no child should ever know. My grandparents, Merritt and Eloise, stepped in without hesitation. They sold their own place across the city, moved into this 4-bedroom home in Ashford, Colorado, and filled every corner with warmth my father couldn't give at the time. I remember evenings when Eloise would sit beside me at the old dining table, teaching me how to slice vegetables without rushing. The smell of simmering broth, the softness of her laugh, those things stitched the first layer of safety back into my life. Merritt tended the garden outside, humming while trimming the roses my mom planted. Whenever the wind swept through the yard, it carried a little bit of her with it. That's why the house mattered. It wasn't walls. It was memory. Then Sabria arrived. My father met her at a work event, and within months, she was in our living room setting down glossy suitcases and announcing she didn't mind the older decor. She said it with a smile that didn't match her eyes. The first week, she reorganized the entire kitchen. The second, she cleared out Eloise's ceramic bowls, quietly replacing them with things she called modern. Merritt simply nodded, but I caught the way his jaw tightened. Sabria's children, Cade and Leora, slipped into the house like they'd been here forever. Cade claimed the downstairs den for his gaming setup. Leora spread her outfits across 2 closets and declared the lighting terrible for photos. I was 12 when the chores began shifting my way. Small things at first, vacuuming, setting the table, then laundry, then everything. Whenever I asked why Cade and Leora didn't help, Sabria would tilt her head and say, "They have different needs, sweetheart. You're more mature." My father, Venton, didn't push back. He seemed grateful to have someone taking charge of a household he'd abandoned emotionally for years. By the time I was 16, I'd memorized everyone's routines. Cade slept until noon, leaving sour-smelling clothes piled in the hallway. Leora rehearsed her fake laugh in the mirror while filming makeup videos she never posted. Sabria floated from room to room, touching surfaces lightly with her fingertips as if testing for dust. She always paused at my mother's framed photo in the hallway but never acknowledged it. Outside this house, my life felt normal. School, friends, part-time work. Inside, I was an unpaid maid slipping through the same rooms my grandparents once protected. Yet I stayed quiet, convincing myself it was temporary, that Dad needed peace, that kindness was a form of strength. But quiet resentment stacks layer by layer until one day even the smallest added weight makes the whole structure shift. And that shift was coming long before Sabria asked me for $930. The weeks leading up to Sabria's rent demand were already stretched thin. I'd started taking more shifts at the cafe to cover my online classes, and every night I came home to something new added to my list of responsibilities. Sabria never wrote them down. She simply announced them as if they were universal truths. "Laundry rotates on Tuesdays now," she'd say, handing me Cade's overflowing basket that smelled like sweat and stale chips. "The upstairs bathroom needs scrubbing again," she'd add, ignoring Leora's contour powder coating the countertop like desert sand. "Remember to wipe the baseboards. Dust collects quickly in old houses." Old houses. She loved calling it that. Meanwhile, Cade lounged in the den yelling into his headset, and Leora filmed haul videos surrounded by unopened boxes. When I'd pass through the hallway, she'd glance at me like I was a background extra walking into her shot. Sometimes she'd say, "You should try dressing up more. Might help your confidence." Then she'd smile sweetly at her phone and go back to posing. Sabria escalated things quietly, which was her specialty. She'd leave stacks of bills on the counter with my name circled in highlighter, pretending it was a gentle reminder. She'd wander behind me adjusting the stove temperature or criticizing the seasoning. She'd tell my father within earshot that I needed to develop independence before adulthood passed me by. But the real turning point came one cold evening when I walked past the partially open door of her so-called meditation room. Her voice drifted out, low, controlled. "She needs space, Venton. Sending her to a college out of state would be good for everyone. She's holding us back, and honestly, she's too attached to this house. Distance will help her grow." The words hit me like a physical blow. I froze in the hallway, grocery bags still in my hands, the cold air from outside clinging to my jacket. She didn't just want me to take on more chores. She wanted me gone. Out of my home. Out of my memories. Out of the way. Later that night, while I folded towels in the laundry room, I replayed the conversation in my mind. My father's silence, Sabria's confidence. The certainty in her voice, like she was making long-term plans that didn't involve me. Something tightened in my chest. Not grief. Not fear. Something sharper. I told myself staying quiet preserved peace. That patience made me strong. That kindness would be recognized. But standing under that humming fluorescent light, I realized the truth. Silence was exactly what Sabria depended on. She thought she knew everything about this house. She thought she understood every advantage she had. She thought I was too timid to push back. She was wrong. Because that night, I remembered something Eloise once told me as she kneaded dough at the counter. The moment you let someone rewrite your place in your own home, you lose more than space. You lose yourself. I wasn't ready to lose anything else. And the first step to taking myself back started with a discovery Sabria never saw coming. The next morning, the house felt colder than usual. Not temperature, something else. Something in the walls, in the silence. I moved through the kitchen, washing the dishes Cade had left in the sink overnight, replaying Sabria's plan to send me out of state as if I were clutter she wanted removed. It wasn't fear anymore. It was clarity. After finishing the dishes, I walked into the storage room at the back of the house, a place that still smelled faintly of Eloise's lavender sachets. Dust motes drifted through a thin beam of winter sunlight as I pulled open an old cedar chest. Inside were things I hadn't touched in years. Merritt's gardening gloves, a faded recipe book, brittle photos curled at the edges. And then I found the envelope. My name written in Eloise's handwriting, sharp and steady. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were documents. No complicated legal jargon. Just straightforward statements confirming something I had never imagined. Merritt and Eloise hadn't just moved into this house with us. They had bought it outright, and transferred ownership to me long before they passed. Quietly, intentionally, as if they knew I would someday need protection. For a long moment, I just sat on the wooden floor, the envelope resting in my lap, the room spinning with memories. Eloise humming in the kitchen. Merritt tapping mud off his boots by the back door. I felt their presence like a hand on my shoulder. Not urging revenge. Just reminding me I had never been as alone as Sabria wanted me to believe. Later that afternoon, I drove across Ashford to see Marielle, my mom's closest friend. Her small craftsman-style home smelled like cinnamon and old books. She listened without interrupting as I told her everything. Sabria's manipulation, my father's passivity, the rent demand, the plan to send me away, the documents my grandparents had left. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "Oriel, your grandparents trusted you more than anyone. They saw who Sabria was long before you did. This house isn't just a home. It's your boundary, and you have every right to protect it." Her words settled deep. We spent the next hour reviewing what I'd found, along with additional papers Eloise had once given Marielle for safekeeping. Old bills, notes from Merritt about the property, and a few recorded voicemails catching Sabria speaking harshly to Eloise years ago. Nothing dramatic, but enough to confirm a pattern. Evidence wasn't vengeance. It was truth. By the time I left Marielle's house, the sun had dipped behind Ashford's rooftops, casting the city in muted blue. I drove home with a steadiness I hadn't felt in years. Determination. Purpose. Sabria wanted to push me out. Instead, she pushed me into remembering who this house truly belonged to. That night, as I walked through the front door and saw Sabria sitting on the couch scrolling her phone, I understood something with absolute certainty. She had no idea the power she'd just handed me. And by the end of the week, the balance in this house would shift forever. I didn't plan to confront her that soon. I thought I'd need days, maybe weeks. Instead, she cornered me the very next evening. I'd just come home from a closing shift, the smell of espresso clinging to my clothes, when I found her sitting at the dining table with a folder placed neatly in front of her. Cade sprawled on the couch behind her, headset around his neck. Leora sat cross-legged on the floor scrolling as if the house were her studio set. Sabria smiled without warmth. Perfect timing, Oriel. We need to discuss your financial contribution. There it was. The line she'd rehearsed. The beginning of the end. I hung up my coat and walked in slowly, letting the quiet stretch. Contribution. Yes, she said, sliding a sheet of paper toward me. $930 a month, plus your share of utilities. It's only fair. She paused, glancing dramatically at Cade and Leora. Everyone has responsibilities. I looked at her, then at them. Cade picking crumbs off his shirt. Leora adjusting her ring light. Everyone? Asked softly. Sabria blinked. Don't be difficult. They're focusing on their futures. You're working now. A humorless laugh escaped me. Their futures. Don't start, Oriel, Cade muttered. Leora flipped her hair. Some people don't get it. Sabria's expression hardened. This is happening. Your father agrees. It's time you learned independence. Independence. In the home my grandparents sacrificed everything to give me. The home I'd cooked in, cleaned in, grown up in. The home Eloise had mourned her daughter in. Sabria had chosen the wrong word. I straightened, sliding the paper back toward her. If you want a discussion, I said, call everyone downstairs. We're doing this as a family. Sabria loved the illusion of formality. She agreed instantly. 5 minutes later my father rushed in, tie askew, face tired. What's going on? Sabria answered for all of us. Your daughter is refusing to contribute to our household. I didn't look at her. I looked at him. Dad, I asked quietly, do you really think I should pay $930 to live here? He hesitated, just enough to confirm everything I feared. Sabria and I talked about it, he said softly. It seems reasonable. Reasonable, I repeated. For me to pay rent while Cade and Leora don't. They're still finding their path, he murmured. I nodded slowly, letting every detail etch itself into memory. Then I placed Eloise's envelope on the table. Okay, I said. Then let's talk about the house. Sabria's face twitched, a tiny glitch beneath her makeup. What does that mean? I opened the envelope and set the documents down, not pushing them toward anyone, just letting them exist. This house, I said quietly, legally belongs to me. Silence fell like a shockwave. Cade stopped mid-breath. Leora lowered her phone. My father's eyes widened. Recognition, guilt, resignation. Sabria laughed first, too loudly. What is this? Some fantasy. You can ask Venton. It's true, I said, my voice even. He's known since Merritt and Eloise passed. My father closed his eyes. Sabria, it's true. They put the house in Oriel's name. The room froze. A stillness so complete it felt like the house itself was holding its breath. Sabria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Why wasn't I told? Why wouldn't you share something like this with me? My father shrank under her stare. It didn't seem necessary. Not necessary. She nearly shouted. I've managed this home for years. I deserve to know. Cut in. Deserve. You've treated me like unpaid labor. In the home my grandparents gave me. Sabria pointed a trembling finger at me. You ungrateful. No, I said sharply. We're done rewriting reality. I reached into my bag and placed a second folder on the table. This, I continued, is a summary of every payment, every bill, every expense I've covered for the house for years. My father's face fell as he skimmed the pages. Oriel, why didn't you tell me? You never asked. Sabria grabbed the papers, scanning them with frantic disbelief. You think this proves anything? You think you can push me around because you found old paperwork? I didn't react. Instead, I pulled out my phone. Press play. Her voice filled the room. The recording from her meditation room. She needs space, Venton. Sending her to a college out of state would be good for everyone. She's holding us back. She's too attached to this house. My father went pale. Cade muttered, damn. Leora's face drained of color. Sabria lunged for the phone. You recorded me. It's legal, I said calmly. And necessary. She looked between all of us, realizing her performance was collapsing. This is my home, she whispered fiercely. I've been here 12 years. You don't get to kick me out. I opened the final folder and slid it toward her. You're right, I said. I don't get to. The law does. She stared down at the eviction notice's official completed stamp. Her mouth fell open as though the floor had shifted under her feet. You can't do this, she said, voice trembling. Venton, say something. My father looked at her. Not cruel, just exhausted. Sabria, it's her house. Cade jumped to his feet. Where are we supposed to go? That, I said, is no longer my responsibility. Leora's eyes filled with tears. Yet even then, she lifted her phone slightly, almost instinctively preparing to film her own meltdown. Sabria shook her head. This is absurd. This is revenge. No, I said. This is a boundary you forced me to draw. The room swirled with shock, denial, and accusations. Sabria paced. Cade cursed. Leora cried softly. My father sank into a chair like a man seeing the wreckage he helped create. I simply gathered the papers, placed them back into Eloise's envelope, and stepped toward the hallway. You have 2 weeks, I said. Then I take back my home. Sabria stopped moving. You think you're strong enough to do this? I met her eyes, steady, unshaken. I didn't think so before. But you helped me understand what strength really looks like. And as I walked upstairs to my room, leaving all 3 of them in stunned silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not fear. Not guilt. The unmistakable weight of my grandparents' faith settling onto my shoulders. The eviction wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. And for the first time, this house finally felt like mine again. 2 weeks passed faster than any of us expected. The morning Sabria finally left felt strangely quiet. No synthetic perfume clouding the hallway. No raised voices from the den. No demands disguised as suggestions. Cade hauled out his gaming equipment with loud complaints. Leora cried the entire time. But none of it shook me. I watched from the doorway. Steady, grounded. Knowing this wasn't cruelty. It was correction. My father didn't move out, not officially, but he spent most nights elsewhere. When he did stop by, he seemed smaller, as if he were standing in the ruins of something he hadn't realized he helped build. We talked a few times, soft, uncertain conversations. But neither of us pretended things could return to how they were. Once the house was empty, I opened all the windows and let Ashford's cold winter air wash through every room. Marielle moved into one of the spare bedrooms a week later, bringing homemade soup and stories about my mom I'd never heard before. Together, we restored the small things Eloise once loved. For the first time in years, I woke up without bracing myself. The house wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was a home. Looking back, reclaiming this house wasn't about walls or paperwork. It was about finally choosing myself after years of shrinking to make room for people who never intended to offer anything back. My grandparents didn't leave me a home. They left me a reminder. Love protects even long after it's gone. If you've ever had to fight for your place in your own family, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. And subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Sometimes justice is quiet, but it changes everything.